My poly girlfriend says her NM side comes out when she's blackout drunk. I'm 22 years old, my girlfriend is 21, and for the last 6 months, I've been trying to figure out where a boundary is supposed to go when you're in love with someone who seems to live on the other side of it. The first few weeks were, for lack of a better word, perfect. The kind of easy, intoxicating beginning where you start to think, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel. Her name is Maya. She's vibrant, funny, and has this way of looking at the world that makes everything seem a little brighter. She's an artist, and she sees color and light in ways I never noticed before. I was completely, unequivocally hooked from our first date, where we spent 3 hours in a coffee shop, and I didn't check my phone once. Then about 2 weeks in, we were lying in bed after a movie, in that comfortable, quiet space where you feel safe enough to say anything. And she dropped the first bomb. She told me she was non-monogamous or polyamorous. I already knew she was pansexual, which was never an issue for me at all, but this was new territory. I think my first question was just a simple, why didn't you tell me this on our first date? She got this look on her face, a kind of vulnerable, scared expression that I would come to know very well. She said she was afraid I'd leave, that she really liked me and didn't want to scare me off before I got to know her. I'm straight and completely monogamous. The idea of an open relationship is something I've never understood or wanted. It's just not how I'm wired. But I didn't want to judge her or make her feel ashamed. So I asked her if this was going to be a problem for us, if she needed that kind of relationship structure to be happy. She was quick to reassure me. She said she had been in a monogamous relationship for 4 years and that she could absolutely do it again with the right person. She looked me right in the eye and said I was the right person. And I trusted her. I chose to believe that our connection was strong enough to make it work, that she was choosing this life with me. That trust, however, turned out to have a pretty short shelf life. Not long after that conversation, the first real crack appeared. We had an open phone rule, not because of any act of jealousy, but more as a principle of transparency we'd agreed on. It was one of those things you agree to early on, thinking you'll never actually need it. She had fallen asleep one night while scrolling on my phone, and I gently took it from her hand to plug it in. I needed to look something up, and when I opened the browser, her last search was still there. It wasn't the browser that was the problem, though. It was the other open tab, ChatGPT. She had asked the AI, word for word, should I text Mike and tell him he's a good friend and the sex was good? The name hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew who Mike was. He was a friend of her most recent ex, and she had told me, in a moment of what I thought was vulnerability, that she'd hooked up with him in the messy aftermath of that breakup. It was a rebound thing, something she said meant nothing. But here she was, weeks into our relationship, workshopping a text to him with a robot, a text that was clearly meant to do more than just affirm a friendship. The phrase, the sex was good, just echoed in my head, a flashing neon sign of disrespect. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't just let it go. I woke her up. I wasn't yelling, but my voice was cold and steady in a way that scared even me. I told her what I found. I told her that she needed to figure out, right now, what she actually wanted. I gave her 2 days to decide if she wanted to be with me, or if she wanted to be texting guys like Mike. I left and went back to my place, leaving her with the ultimatum. It was the longest 2 days of my life. She called me a dozen times, sent me walls of text. She showed up at my door crying. She chose me. She apologized, she begged, she swore it was a stupid, insecure impulse, and that it would never happen again. She said she was still getting over her ex, and Mike was just a loose, and she felt a weird need to tie up, but that I was the one she wanted a future with. Against my better judgment, against that little voice in the back of my head that was screaming red flag, I gave her another chance. I loved her, and I wanted to believe that love was enough to overcome this. A few weeks went by, and things seemed to get back to normal. We were good. The trust was shaky, like walking on a frozen lake you're not sure will hold your weight, but we were rebuilding. Then came a night that everything went completely off the rails. Her roommates, Shay and Ryan, were having a small get-together for Ryan's birthday. It was just a handful of people, including 2 guys I'd never met before, Nick and Tony. I got a bad feeling about Nick almost immediately. Early in the night, he was aggressively pushing Ryan to take shots of Everclear. Not just offering, but really pressuring him in that smug frat boy way. It was the kind of energy that just puts you on edge, like he was there to cause chaos, not to celebrate. I kept a close eye on him, especially since Maya had mentioned that he'd tried to hit on her a few times in the past when they'd hung out with mutual friends. Later that night, Maya and I went up to her room to have some time to ourselves. We were being intimate, and we decided to try something new, something she had wanted to explore. I was hesitant, but I went along with it because I wanted her to feel happy and fulfilled. But it ended up making me feel really uncomfortable, just disconnected and strange. It wasn't her fault. It was just a boundary I didn't know I had until we crossed it. I gently stopped things, and I told her I was feeling off. I told her I needed some comfort, some reassurance. And in that moment of vulnerability, I told her again that I really didn't feel safe with Nick still in the house. His presence was just a dark cloud over the evening for me. And after feeling so weird, I just wanted to feel secure with her. She was amazing in that moment. She held me, told me she understood completely, and said she would go right downstairs, tell the guys it was getting late and they needed to leave, and then she'd come back up and make us some late-night comfort food. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I felt seen and cared for. I kissed her and told her thank you. I trusted her. I was exhausted from a long week and knew I had to be up for work in 7 hours, so while she was downstairs, I laid down and accidentally drifted off. I couldn't have been asleep for more than 20 minutes when I was woken up by the sound of her crying. Not quiet sniffles, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs. I shot out of bed and ran downstairs, my heart pounding, thinking something terrible had happened. The scene in the living room stopped me in my tracks. She was in Nick's arms, hugging him tightly, her face buried in his chest. He was stroking her hair and wiping tears from his own face, like they were in the middle of some intense, emotional movie scene. She was completely ignoring me, standing on the stairs, and I could tell from the way she was swaying slightly. She was several drinks deeper than when she had left the room. "Hey," I said, my voice sharp. "What's going on? Come on, let's go upstairs." She pulled away from Nick, but refused to even look at me. "No," she said, her voice slurry and defiant. "I'm fine. I'm staying down here." The anger and frustration that washed over me was so intense I could barely see straight. But I knew that getting into a fight with her while she was drunk, in front of this guy I already despised, was a losing battle. I told myself to be the bigger person. I went back upstairs to cool off, telling myself I'd deal with it in the morning when she was sober. I was fuming, but I was also just so tired. I had to work, and I couldn't afford to be a wreck. I fell back asleep, but I was woken up again a little while later by a commotion outside her bedroom window. I looked out, and what I saw will be burned into my memory forever. Maya was face down in the wet grass of the front lawn. She was dry heaving, her body convulsing, and she was making these awful, shallow, gasping sounds. She was barely breathing, and standing a few feet away, illuminated by the porch light, just watching her, were Nick and Tony. They weren't helping her. They were just standing there like spectators at a zoo. I didn't even think. I sprinted out of the house in my shorts, scooped her up. She's tiny, maybe 5 feet tall and 130 pounds, and carried her inside. She was like a dead weight in my arms, her skin cold and clammy. I got her onto the couch, but as soon as she was horizontal, she started having a full-blown panic attack. Her eyes were wide with terror, but she wasn't seeing me. And then she stopped breathing. Her chest was still. For a terrifying, eternal second, I thought she was gone. I had to shake her, shout her name, anything to keep her conscious while her roommate Shay was on the phone with 911. The paramedics arrived and managed to stabilize her, their calm professionalism a stark contrast to the chaos in my own frantic panic. As they were getting her ready for the ambulance, a furious Shay confronted Nick. He admitted, almost proudly, that after she had come downstairs, he had given her 5 shots of Everclear, 2 shots of Pink Whitney, and 2 canned Cutwater cocktails. This was after she had already been drinking, and after he admitted she had told him she didn't want any more. He had pushed and pushed until she gave in, a tiny girl who had no chance against that much high-proof alcohol. It wasn't just that she got drunk. He had actively, deliberately gotten her dangerously intoxicated. I followed the ambulance to the hospital and sat in the sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting room for hours while they pumped her stomach and got her on M4. When she was finally sober enough to talk, the rest of the story came out, not from her, but from Tony, who I guess felt some sliver of guilt and cornered me by the vending machines. He told me that before she passed out, while she was blackout drunk, she had climbed into Nick's lap, straddled him, and was laughing and joking about riding him like a horse. Hearing that, after everything else, after she was supposed to be comforting me, after she almost died, just crushed me. It was the ultimate betrayal, a physical manifestation of the disrespect I'd been feeling all along. When I finally confronted her about it in her hospital bed, she just cried and said she didn't remember any of it. And then she delivered the line that has been haunting me ever since. "Look," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It's not an excuse, but when I get blackout drunk, my non-monogamous side comes out." I just stared at her, completely stunned into silence. I told her that's not how it works. That's not an identity, that's a cop-out. She knowingly entered a monogamous relationship with me. She knew the rules, the boundaries, the commitment we had agreed on. And she still chose to get so obliterated with a guy she knew had a history of hitting on her that she completely lost control of her actions, disrespected our relationship, and put her own life in grave danger. She almost died. And her excuse was that her other side took over, as if she were possessed by a demon she had no control over. It was the most profound abdication of responsibility I had ever heard. Since that night, our conversations have been a circular kind of hell. She says things that contradict each other in the same breath. Just last night, she told me, "You are my ideal person. You're everything I've ever wanted in a partner." It was what I wanted to hear, but then she followed it up with, "But in my perfect, ideal world, I could explore my sexuality with other people and still come home to you at the end of the day." I just looked at her exhausted. So, if this isn't your ideal world, and I'm not enough for that world, then why are you even here? She insists that she's choosing to be monogamous for me, that this is what she wants. She even says that the thought of me being with another girl would make her physically sick. But when I flip the script and ask her how she would feel if another man was with her, if she had the freedom she seems to crave, her answer is always vague and feels completely fake. It's like she's telling me what she thinks I want to hear, not what she actually feels. The weeks after the hospital were tense. She promised to stop drinking, at least for a while. She deleted and blocked Nick's number in front of me. She swore up and down that she would do anything to earn my trust back. And I, like a fool, wanted to believe her. We started going to therapy together, which was my idea. I thought if a neutral third party could help us unpack this, maybe we could find a way forward. The therapist was a kind woman who listened patiently to our story. But in our sessions, a pattern emerged. Maya would express immense remorse for hurting me and for the danger she put herself in. But whenever the therapist tried to dig into the why she drank so much, why she made those choices, why she felt the need to excuse it with her polyamory, she would shut down. She would revert to her script. "I don't remember. It's not who I am. My NM side takes over." The therapist tried to explain that an identity isn't an excuse for behavior that harms a relationship, that true non-monogamy is built on even more communication and trust than monogamy, not less. But it was like the words just bounced off her. A month after the incident, we had what felt like a good week. We were communicating, she was sober, and I started to feel a glimmer of hope. That weekend, we were invited to a small bonfire at a mutual friend's house. I was hesitant, but she promised it would be low-key and that she wouldn't drink. I agreed to go. For the first hour, it was fine. But then, some of Nick's friends showed up. Nick wasn't there, but his presence was felt. One of the guys offered Maya a beer. I watched her, holding my breath. She looked at me, then at the beer, and then she laughed. "Just one won't hurt," she said, taking it from him. My heart sank. One beer turned into two, and then someone brought out tequila shots. I pulled her aside and told her I was uncomfortable, that she had promised. She got defensive. "Stop trying to control me," she snapped. "I'm an adult. I can have a few drinks." She ended up getting drunk, not blackout, but drunk enough that her personality shifted. She became loud, overly flirtatious with the guys there, and completely dismissive of me. We left in a tense, angry silence. The car ride home was when I finally broke. I told her I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't live my life as her warden, constantly on edge, waiting for the next time she would decide that her impulses were more important than her promises, more important than my feelings, more important than her own safety. I told her that I loved her, but that her version of love felt like a constant state of chaos and anxiety for me. I couldn't be her ideal person in a world she clearly didn't want to live in. I couldn't be the anchor for someone who seemed determined to drift out to sea. I laid out every instance. The ChatGPT message, the night she comforted Nick instead of me, the alcohol poisoning, her excuses, and now this, a broken promise that proved she hadn't learned anything. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. I was empty. She cried, of course. She begged. She said this time she would really change, that she would go to AA, that she would do whatever it took. But the words were hollow now. I had heard them all before. The trust was not just broken, it was gone, pulverized into dust. I helped her pack some of her things from my apartment that night. It was the saddest, most painful thing I've ever had to do. With every shirt she folded, every painting she took off the wall, it felt like a piece of our shared history was being erased. When she was about to leave, she turned to me at the door, her eyes red and swollen. "So this is it?" she whispered. "You're just giving up on us?" I shook my head, a single tear finally escaping and tracing a path down my cheek. "No, Maya," I said, my voice barely holding together. "I'm not giving up on us. There's no us anymore. There's you, and there's me. And I'm finally choosing to take care of me." She left, and the silence she left behind was deafening. But it was also, for the first time in a long time, peaceful. I love her. A part of me probably always will. But I've learned that sometimes love isn't enough. You can't build a future on a foundation of broken promises and fundamental incompatibilities. It feels like she's a person torn in two, stuck between the life she claims she wants with me and the identity she uses as a shield for her worst impulses. And I was the one stuck in the middle, paying the price for her internal war. I finally realized that the only line left to draw was the one that separated my life from hers.